Hello and good afternoon, runners out there. This is Coach Roberto Manager from NYR. We have a special show for you today. Is United Airlines NYC Half Marathon Race Week. So we're going to be covering all sorts of things all week long. But today on this show specifically, we're going to talk about race recovery. Obviously, we're going to help you how to get to the race, etc. in other shows. But once you run the race, you need to recover. And we always say recovery starts immediately after the race. We call that the 14th mile. But with us today to talk about that is an absolute expert, somebody well above my experience level. So with us today from the Hospital for Special Surgery is Letty Kruger. She's a PT, DPT, SCS, CSCS, aka she's an expert. So we're going to speak about all things race day recovery. Letty, welcome today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah. So, how are you feeling? Obviously, it's race week, and we're going to be covering race day recovery. But you've been around HSS for a while and around runners, so you've seen it all. How does race week, for the TCS New York City Marathon, for United Airlines, NYC, how does that raise the temperature for you folks at HSS?
Yeah, I mean it's and it's a super exciting time. Just to have everyone around and everyone kind of has those pre-race jitters, and we're helping everyone work through those. And we've been working for the past few months on strengthening and getting everyone ready to be in the best position to really kind of optimize their race and obviously avoid any injuries during or afterwards.
Wonderful. So we'll just jump right into it. But before that, let us know where you're watching from out there in the social media world. Let us know if you have any questions. Usually I handle them if I'm on the training side. But again, we have an expert today in Letty, so we want to answer all your questions pre-hab, post-hab, and again, race recovery. So Letty, kicking it off, what is the most important thing to do once runners cross the finish lines in terms of recovery?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like, congratulations to everyone that's put in all the work and the training to be able to do this. And when you cross that finish line, just really kind of take a moment to take it all in and be super proud of yourself and everything that's taken to get to this point. But like you said, recovery begins right away, and recovery is actually something that you're kind of working on and experimenting with and making adjustments to through the entire training process, just like everything else. So just making sure that leading up to the race, you have proper sleep, hydration, food, nutrition. That's all going to help you recover faster and stay healthy during your training and feel better immediately after the race. Um, so yeah, just make sure that after the race you're really replenishing your fuel source. Make sure that you're drinking enough, that you have adequate intake of fats, proteins, and complex carbs right after the race. Make sure you're really sleeping 7 hours a night, giving your body time to heal and repair leading up to the race. And then of course you can come and see us. We'll have a tent at the finish line. We'll have physical therapists and exercise physiologists there to answer any questions. We'll have some yoga mats laid out with straps for stretching, some resistance bands, and foam rollers, so you can get on there and kind of start working everything out right after the race.
Yeah, thank you for that. And one thing I'll definitely say at all our Marquis events when HSS is there, it's a world-class event and they have just the best. And I constantly see runners just making a beeline there. You help stretch them, get them, recovered and on the road back to their next race. So obviously you've crossed the finish line, you're euphoric, etc. But like feelings wise, what are some of the feelings that runners could expect to experience within the minutes after, hours after, days after? So obviously we all travel from different locations to get to the race and we have to get back. So what are some of the feelings that runners could expect, especially for some of our first time half marathoners?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to that note, it's really going to depend on your training status. But in general, just expect some soreness really throughout the entire body. Obviously, especially in the legs, the quads, the hamstrings, the calves are going to take the most beating and the most load throughout the race. But, don't discount kind of like in the upper traps and the biceps, really just from holding that running posture for a long period of time. So expect some soreness in the upper body too. And then, obviously there's the component of mental exhaustion. It's such kind of a mixture of feelings and emotions leading up to the race and then during and after the race. So just kind of some general fatigue, tired, just mental exhaustion plays into it all too.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to actually mention, and your first question is for those of you who are running the race for the first time, we do have an awesome recovery bag, we call it, from our partners at Hospital for Special Surgery. And in there, we typically have water, something to eat and drink. So as Letty mentioned, it's important to take in some nutrition, hydration right after, because as we've all agreed upon, recovery starts immediately after. So for those of you who've never run a marquee event with us, definitely utilize that bag. So again, thank you to HSS. Letty, I assume you won't be packing that bag yourself, correct?
We got a little bit of help with that.
Excellent. So moving on, like, what are warning signs that runners should watch out for after the half if they're experiencing pain? Because a lot of times you've run the race, so you're experiencing pain or soreness, but it's not always that easy to differentiate the two of them, even for experienced runners. So can you tell us maybe how to identify the difference between them and what are some of the warning signs?
Yeah. So, like you said, you've been doing a lot of training throughout this entire process. So you should know your bodies pretty well and how your bodies feel after training runs and long runs. So really just look out for anything that feels really out of the ordinary. And during the race, you obviously don't want to push through any like sharp or severe pains. Anything like that after the race is something you're going to want to get looked at by a medical professional right away. Big things to look out for: any injury in the lower extremity that don't allow you to bear weight through the legs, or an injury that becomes very like hot or red or swollen are definitely things to look out for and things to get checked out soon after the race. Really any like aches and pains that don't start steadily improving after the race or getting better, things that are lasting for more than like a few days or a week, any kind of nagging things like that that you just don't notice steady improvement.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. A question that I kind of just came to mind when we're giving runners tips for our various events, we always say, use the training and specifically the long runs as a sort of dress rehearsal for what you're going to eat before the race and the night before, what you're going to have for breakfast, et cetera, et cetera. So would that be something that could also be equally utilized in terms of race recovery? Because oftentimes we take the races more serious than the training, as we somewhat should. But when we finish training, it's like we're busy New Yorkers, busy workers or whatnot. So people tend to just skip post long run recovery, and they maybe tune into a show like this and like, oh, race day recovery, like post race day recovery, like that's important. But like, can you talk a little bit about what could be utilized, especially in a somewhat truncated timeline for race day recovery, but trying it out in a weekend long run type setting?
Yeah, so just like everything else, you should treat your long runs kind of like a dress rehearsal for the race. So you should be experimenting, the night before, the morning of, with your run, and then with recovery following the run, just to really get to know your body and what feels best and how sore you are the day following. So that way you can experiment leading up to the race so you know what is best for you and your body to recover after the race. And obviously, race day is not the time to change anything. So using what's consistently worked best for you and not changing anything in the week leading up to the race.
Yeah, thank you for that. So again, from those of you folks watching out there, let us know where you're watching from, if you're running the race, if this is your first race, and obviously any sort of questions you have. It could be about race day recovery, post-race recovery, or prehab injury-related questions. Letty, as I read her certifications and titles, she's a pro at everything. So yeah, let us know what sort of questions you have. And then kind of coming back to a question that you answered before, you mentioned that you might feel soreness in your shoulders and arms and things like that because, we're running hard, we hold tension differently. So what are some of the best ways to deal with full body soreness? We tend to think of soreness as just a sort of the waist down and running, but there's sometimes people feel full body soreness because of the impact of running and bouncing and, running on FDR, which is a pretty hard tarmac versus,
Yeah.
Prospect Park, for example.
Yeah. So you can do different sorts of things, like an Epsom salt bath. You can do some contrast baths where you're going from a hot bath to a cold bath every 20 minutes or so. You can soak or take a warm shower and then work on some soft tissue work afterwards once the muscles are warm and loose. Really in the days following, you want to keep moving. You want to keep your blood flowing. You can do some, quick shakeout runs, some cycling, some active recovery. So you're not putting additional stress on the legs or load through the joints, but you're just getting your blood moving again. You can use some of those, the Normatec compression sleeves and elevation are a great tool. The massage guns are good. I wouldn't use those maybe immediately after the race or the following day when the muscles are really sore because they can be a little too much direct pressure. But in the week following the race, that's a good thing to utilize as well.
Great. You actually touched upon one of those, in my mind, hot button topics of like hot and cold. So I personally can't stand being cold, ice bath, things like that. I recognize their therapeutic benefits, but so I prefer Epsom salt bath, which I live by. But what are the advantages of using either cold or heat to aid in post-race recovery?
Yeah, you're right. It's the great debate and the ongoing debate, but really, whatever works best for you. Again, you're going to be experimenting with this stuff throughout the process. So, whatever you're used to using and whatever you prefer, by the time you get home after the race, it really doesn't matter too much. Maybe initially, I would actually turn towards a little more heat and then start doing the contrast bath where you're switching from hot to cold, again, like 20 minutes at a time. But whatever works best for you, both are beneficial.
Great. And then kind of moving with staying with the theme of post-race recovery. So nutrition is another thing that, as I mentioned before, we pack or you guys pack water, things to eat in the HSS post-race recovery bag. But a lot of times we encourage people to take a little bit of water, take a little bit of a bite of protein, things like that, because it's obviously important to aid in recovery. But a lot of times we also get the feedback like, I'm just not hungry. Like I've run a half marathon, I've run a marathon, I've taken 10,000 gels, et cetera. Like my stomach just doesn't feel hungry. So what sort of advice would you give to people within that 30 minutes while they're still in the race atmosphere and even the hours and potentially even day after as far as nutrition and how to go about that?
Yeah, you bring up a good point with kind of the nausea. The running just it causes some gastrointestinal distress, and the oxygen isn't getting to your brain and your organs and your muscles as fast as you need it to sometimes. So your body is like pushed out of this equilibrium and this balance that it likes to be in. So if you do get any sort of nausea from all the goos and from the running, just really keep moving. Take some slow breaths. Try to get some rest. Take tiny sips of water rather than any big gulps, and try to get some little bites of food and electrolytes down instead of eating a large meal. But you should approach your nutrition and your after your races and your long runs just by trying to replenish all those energy sources that were depleted during exercise. So replenishing your carbohydrates and proteins are really going to be the building blocks for rebuilding muscle. And then of course just make sure you stay hydrated, which will help with some soreness following the next days as well.
All right, it's great to hear that kind of cements what we always keep saying. But again, we'll get feedback that people are like, I'm just not hungry. Great. So I think we
Yeah.
have a couple of questions and a shout out. So we'll go to those right now. Okay, so Jess is asking, how long should I wait after the race to get a massage? So, ready?
Yeah, I would say just a couple days. If you have a good relationship with your massage therapist, you can just tell them that you ran a race and maybe not to do too much deep tissue initially. But after a few days, when you're not experiencing a lot of muscle soreness, they can start to get deeper into the tissue, and you should tolerate that pretty well. We just don't want any really hard, direct pressure on areas that are really sore.
All right, thank you. Sam, how do you know if you're striking the right balance between rest, recovery, and maintaining fitness?
Sure, this is going to be important for you to experiment with leading up into the race. Usually, I'll educate people to follow a training program or follow a coach, just to have something to kind of base your baseline off of. But make sure you're doing some strength training throughout the process, 2 or 3 times a week. That includes some bilateral and some unilateral exercises. It's not only going to make you stronger and faster, but it's going to help with muscular endurance, support the joints, and prevent injury. You also want to mix in a cross training day or two, and then of course make sure that you're resting once a week.
All right,
You don't want
thank
to
you for that.
overlook the importance of having a rest day.
Yeah, I would say the gains are made in the recovery, which is something that I wish I was more on top of back in my day, if you will. But it's yeah, certainly rest days are key. Um, Amy is asking, are massage guns or those leg compression sleeves a good idea post race? How can I learn more about those? So I think you had mentioned that a bit ago.
Yeah, the compression sleeves are excellent post race. Those help give you some compression. You can elevate while you do it, and that'll help to kind of keep the blood moving and flush everything out. We touched a little bit on the massage guns previously, but waiting a couple days until you start those because again, they can be too much direct pressure to anywhere that's really sore.
All right, well, thank you for that. Hopefully that helps you, Amy. All right, next question. Oh, a shout out from maybe a different Amy. Hey guys, thanks for doing this. You're welcome, Amy. Hopefully it helps. And then we got Billy. I'm ready to run on Sunday. So awesome, Billy. We look forward to welcoming you on Sunday. We're having spectacular weather, at least on my end. I love the sort of weather we're going to be having. So yeah, continue to send us any other questions and shout outs you have while we have Letty here for a few more minutes. So going back to at least my line of questions, Letty. I was going to ask more or less about pitfalls that runners could have with recovery. So there's obviously people who might not want to do this or that because they don't have time, or sometimes we're just lazy after the race. But there's also some people who might overdo it. So can you talk to us a little bit about the potential for overdoing post-race recovery, whether it's too much ice baths or too much eating, or is there such a thing as overdoing it? Maybe I should even clarify that.
I think there's definitely a thing in terms of overdoing it. If you're getting back into runs and long runs too soon, this is going to be different for everyone and depend on your training status. But you never want to go into a run feeling a lot of muscular soreness or any aches or pains still from the previous run. So I think just giving yourself enough time to recover, especially with a race, we kind of get amped up and maybe we go a little bit faster than we're used to, and then it takes a couple more days to recover than we may think. So just listening to your body and making sure that you're taking enough time to recover, I think, is probably the big thing. And where people tend to overdo it is kind of getting back into things too quickly. Because I understand the want and the need to run and move on to your next race, and it's never easy to tell a runner not to run. But just listen to your body and soak in being proud of yourself for what you've just accomplished, and give yourself a couple days.
Yeah, thank you. So something you just mentioned a couple of days, which reminded me that oftentimes I believe we've said ourselves, but we hear that maybe recovery is, at least for the half marathon distance, like 1 day off for every mile run. Obviously, some people approach it a lot fitter than others, and other people, this is their goal race, so they could take some time off after that, enjoy New York City if they're here on holiday. But some people have other races that are training for, like Boston's around the corner. So the question I guess I have for you is, how do you strike that right balance to recover from this race while still trying to maintain a decent level of fitness, either in general or because you have maybe a marathon coming up?
Yeah, I think that's where you're really utilizing your cross training. Like, get on a bike, cycle, get the blood moving, get your heart pumping again. So you're not losing any of those cardiovascular benefits. You're still keeping your body moving. Maybe you just do some shorter runs or you do some lighter runs. So you're still being active. It's just not at such a high level in the few days following the race.
Great. And before we kick it off to one of the other questions, kind of as a follow-up from that, because again, sometimes us runners could be a little bit anxious about, like, if I take too much time off or I recover too much, I'm going to lose fitness. I've been working for weeks and months. So in your expert opinion, Letty, how long does it generally take to lose fitness, or at least feel the effects of fitness? Like, if I take off a week after the United Airlines NYC half, a week later, will I be completely a shadow of myself, or like how long does it take to lose fitness in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it takes a lot longer than you actually think it does. And when you're at a high level of training, and taking a week off isn't really going to negatively affect anything. So just be easy on yourself and be patient with yourself. You're really not losing as many fitness gains as you feel like you are that quickly.
That's great to hear. Again, as a coach, I hear that question often, and it's so great to have somebody, of an expert to say, like, relax, a week off, you won't lose fitness. Although obviously you might feel a little bit lethargic. So yeah, we're gonna kick it to some questions from you, the viewers at home. Okay, Gutham says, any tips for knee pain following the race?
Yeah, these are always hard questions to answer. It all depends, and it's hard to give a concrete answer without actually seeing you and knowing exactly what the knee pain is like. But we do, I mean, we have physical therapists all over, in the city and in Westchester County. So if it's anything that's nagging, or like I said, anything that's hot or swollen or just not going away, I would recommend getting that looked at by either a physical therapist or a doctor to maybe get some imaging to really know exactly what's going on and to provide you with some individualized recommendations.
Yeah, spot on. Thank you. Michelle, another knee question. I hurt my knee after my last half. Is swimming gentle enough, or should I pause all exercise for a few days?
Yeah, again, it depends. If you're tolerating swimming without any additional pain, then that's great. And I would recommend doing that. You can always just do a flutter kick, maybe avoid the breaststroke kick, or put a buoy between your legs. So you're just working on the pool. And again, getting the blood moving, the oxygen flowing, and some of the cardiovascular benefits of that, as long as it's not irritating the knee.
Yeah, great advice. I actually love aqua jogging, even if you're a great swimmer, aqua jogging feels like I'm exercising to drown myself. But yeah, definitely a recommendation. All right, next question. Eddie, how can you avoid runner's toe? Well, maybe before you answer, Letty, can you let the rest of us know what runner's toe is and then how to avoid it?
Yeah, so when you're running, you're getting a lot of push off through your ankle and your foot, but you're also getting a good amount of extension through the great toe. So it depends. Runner's toe could actually be coming from the toe, or it could be coming from some restrictions in either muscle or tissue extensibility or joint mobility up at the ankle, or even all the way up. So if this is something that's nagging and something that you're dealing with, again, I would recommend getting it looked at by someone so we can figure out exactly where it's coming from and how to best treat it, because it's not always, the source of pain isn't always where things are coming from.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for that, Letty. Like, the race hasn't started yet. We're getting ready to kick off the experience and welcome the runners from around the country and the world to this race. And we hope that they're super prepared and ready for the race. We'll take care of the pre-race strategy. But Letty, you've really helped us out with the post-race recovery and even some injury-related questions. So I feel I'm better armed to answer some of those questions, and hopefully you runners out there feel even better for your post-race, which obviously will come sometime midday Sunday or Sunday afternoon. So, Letty, HSS, Hospital for Special Surgery, thank you so much for being with us today.
Good. Yeah, it was great. It was great. And yeah, don't hesitate to stop into the HSS 10 and ask us some questions after the race too, if anything's bugging you.
All right, will you be there on Sunday?
I will not be there on Sunday, but I'll be there. I'll be there for future races.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for your advice today, and have a good day.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye bye.